Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. This is episode 315. We're recording this live on February 19th, 2026. I'm your host, Nick Rome, and I'm joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hi there, Nick. How are you doing?
Hey, I told you in the pre-show, Barry, not to ask me that because I'm not feeling too well today, but we're gonna get through it. We got we got a great show for you lined up tonight. As reluctantly as last week, we have more AI stories, but they're not about AI this time. They're about the effects of AI. So it'll be an interesting take on it. But first, programming notes. For those of you who have been following along with us here at the show and the lab and their efforts, you know that we have a new series out called User Experience Points, where we look at the intersection of human factors in gaming. The latest episode is out now. It's all about Marvel Rivals, which is a popular character-based game, and looking at engagement optimized matchmaking. Have you ever heard of that term, Barry?
No, I haven't. It was first for me. So
Yeah. So go check it out on our short form platforms. That's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Go take a look at episode 2. It's out now. But Barry, I got to know what's going on over at 1202.
well, 12:02 February's episode is now up. About an hour before this show's gone live. So I recorded a chat with Martin Thody. Now, those of you who follow us over at 1202 will recognize the name because he's been a friend of the show for a long time since the show started. But he's currently the president of the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors, and so because he was a long time friend of the show, he was more than happy to come on and give me his reflections and his thoughts about what it means to be president, and we were able to chat a bit from our own different own experiences and perspectives. We're also considering doing some almost round table type activities where we can try and have a bit of a wider discussion on the topics that we've spoken about in the main interviews. Almost a companion episode, if you will. So if anybody fancy being involved in any of them, then just get in touch, and once we work out how we're going to do them, because we wanted to do them almost live, properly around a table, but actually we'll get much better interaction, I think, if we use the online platform. So if you want to get involved, get in touch and we'll see what we do. And just a final reminder, if you're looking to use the website to access 1202, the website name has changed to 1202pod.com. So the address is 1202pod.com.
All right. Well, let's get into the thick of it, huh? Yes, that's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, we got 2 stories up. You want to take them one by one?
Yep. So tonight we're diving into 2 timely and some would suggest troubling developments of the intersection of artificial intelligence and psychological health. So first up, researchers are now talking about what they call AI replacement dysfunction, a set of stress, anxiety, insomnia, and identity loss symptoms emerging not from direct AI usage per se, but from the constant narrative that AI will make people obsolete at work. This looming fear of displacement, even ahead of actual automation, is shaping how people feel about their roles, their purpose, and their mental well-being. Nick, do you feel that constant narrative? Do you feel constantly anxious, stressed, and have insomnia around AI taking over your job?
Personally, no. I can give a concrete example of why. Just this week, I saw how a certain program translated something into something else that you would use as like a design tool, and the translation didn't do anything structural to the core to the core files, and so it was bad. But so I don't personally feel. I think human factors work is going to be very human centered for a very long time. I think we will work with AI as teammates. Blah blah blah. Let's get back to the article at hand, though. Here, I feel that this sentiment is something that you see fairly common. I mean, you can see this in the comments of any of the new videos that are coming out generated by AI or pictures or something convincing, you see comments like "We're cooked," or "I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna have a job," or "Back in my day, we didn't have to worry about this type of thing." Um, and so I think there is definitely the sentiment there publicly. I think there's the article itself pulls out um, clinical applications and sort of using this as a clinically treatable thing. I struggle with that only because of our privileged position, but sort of our position advocating for people to team with AI partners rather than having those AI partners completely erase the position. Will it happen outright? Yes, absolutely. Is the fear justified in some cases? Sure, but I think we as a society should look beyond that a little bit and think about what opportunities then arise when those positions um, are then taken over by AI in so many terms. Well, then you have like supervisory roles of those AI, and the role just changes. I mean, the same thing happened with calculators. The same thing happened with automobiles. Like you name it, we've adapted. And I firmly believe that we'll adapt again. And I think in a lot of ways this article is sensational. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I first read the article, I was very much of the thing. Well, we've been here before. We've been here loads of times before. Every time we get some sort of industrial or technological revolution, they're going to be jobs are lost. Jobs are lost to technology, but then new jobs, as you just said, jobs are created. So life it isn't changing, it's going to move. And maybe we as humans, some people say we don't like change. Maybe that's it, but I don't think that's where this story is truly going. I think you're right, it is possibly a bit sensationalist. However, is this almost a real thing of AI bullying from management? So you could historically, I mean, I guess the way I thought about it was if in the factory assembly line, that you could see, everything was by hand. Everybody, people were on the line putting that together, and then people said, "Oh, we're going to get these machines in to come and do your job." And now we've got factory lines that are pretty much autonomous. You've got robotics going and really doing things faster, longer, safer, and with greater precision. And then there's certain elements that only people can do, and they do them bits. And I was like, isn't that just this? Isn't that just this again? But I think you can see here that you've got bosses there, you've got managers going, AI is going to take over your job. Why do we need you anymore? You're useless. AI is going to do it. And you sit there and go, well, okay, AI could take over my job, but actually, you don't know what my job is. And most people don't actually understand what AI is in its entirety and how it's used. Therefore, are you saying that you don't know what I do? And then when it all goes wrong, so you leave, or you become discontent, you go and find another job, and then they need to hire you back because they realize AI can't do the job. Um, so it all really it's just a mess. And so I think it is. I can see how people feel that discontent because of what they're doing, and I think there are. I did some research on this. I say I did. Amanda pointed out some examples. Um, because we were talking about it on the way back from an event today, and she highlighted, actually probably the biggest one of this is Duolingo. So if you know, Duolingo is the language training app, has the cute little owl logo, and they fairly recently turned around and said, right, we are going to be an AI first company. So when they used to have lots of humans doing most of the roles in terms of translation, in terms of their social media and all that sort of stuff. It was really on point in their social media game. But the senior management at Duolingo turned around and said, "No, we're going to be an AI first company." And and that had a double effect of the employees were really annoyed the fact that they were being pushed down this AI first approach. Um, so quite a lot of them left. But then the subscribers, when they heard about what was happening, the number of subscribers to Duolingo went through the floor, and the backlash on social media forced Duolingo to delete most of the content of its accounts because of this approach that that AI would come first. So you can see how that affected both employees because they left, but also the end customer. The end customer felt awful about what had happened to them as well, and responded that, and basically the company suffered hugely as a result of that. So that's not to say that I don't I don't think anybody was suggesting that the quality of the work was any less at that point. But they just didn't like the way it was done. So that was sort of one example. The other example I'll bring out was Klarna. So the obviously the credit company, and they decided that they were going to replace a lot of contractors with AI, and so they didn't realize they thought they didn't need a lot of these people. Use AI to do a lot of the interface to do a lot of the investigative work and make a lot of that stuff happen. They then went through almost a revelation that they weren't being as successful, and they needed that human touch in what they were delivering. So they then rehired all the people that they got rid of to say, look, we need to bring you back because we recognize we need to have this input. So I guess there's two examples of where employees didn't feel valued, didn't feel safe in what they were doing, so they acted with their feet and they left, and and then they realized that it was a failed idea.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this this change versus some of the other changes that we've mentioned, like cars or calculators or anything else that has changed the industry, is that those were those were sort of um, things that came out that were basically complete when they came out.
Mm.
So a calculator does calculations. Sure, it's big and bulky, but it does what it does. Car, same thing. There may not be as much of them, but as more are produced, then you have more access to it and more people are using it. But the thing here, I think that's different is that AI is here and the models are consistently changing. And what you'll find is that something that wasn't capable last week is suddenly capable this week of doing that thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, you mentioned vibe coding. I'll bring that up in one more thing, but developers laughed at this a few years ago, and now it's a real strategy. I know there are some reports out there of like big, well-known teams at big, well-known companies not having coded a single thing since like December, and they're basically just interacting with an AI to get the code in a place where it needs to be, and they're doing reviews of the AI's work, and that's what they're doing now. And so that's out there. And I bring that up to say that this rolling deployment of AI models and capabilities is probably contributing to this anxiety because you never know when that shoe is going to drop. When is it going to be capable of doing my job? When is it
yeah,
going to be capable of doing that thing that will essentially quote unquote replace me? And so I think that's probably one of the larger differences here that we see with this innovation versus innovations in the past is that this is forever evolving or will be forever evolving. And so there's this uncertainty that this anticipatory stress and anxiety that's coming, um, because I might lose my job soon, but I don't know when it's going to happen.
yeah,
And how do you prepare for that? It's like there's really the best thing that you can do is understand what the models are capable of. But I mean, that's a lot of overhead to ask somebody who's not in the field to sort of learn overnight. Um, I don't know. I find that this one in particular, uh, that they're, especially if we lean towards more of like a clinical diagnosis of this thing, I think that's where we get ourselves into a little trouble. And I don't want to downplay anyone's stress or anxiety. I want to downplay tying it to this innovation particularly, because this is what I would consider workplace stress. If your employer is not providing an environment that makes you feel safe and secure for, you, your family, all that stuff, I think that is a related of that's more related to work related anxiety than AI related anxiety, because I think now companies need to be a little bit more resilient as they approach, um think about human first companies, right? I mean, they
Yeah,
have to be a little bit more resilient in how they treat the integration of AI tools, so that way the people that are working for those companies are going to be assured that they are taken care of, and that they will integrate these tools respectfully, and in a way that is efficient and not going to damage any sort of work satisfaction. So I have a lot of thoughts on this one. Um, I tend to think that the clinical approach, we can't just tie it to AI,
yeah.
because yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think the anxiety, as you quite rightly point out, the anxiety over such a quickly changing technology. I mean, we're in this element now that it is advancing so rapidly that just when you think you can put a finger on it, it's advanced and it's moved. I mean, ChatGPT is probably the most famous AI instantiation that everybody talks about. Yes, it's an LLM, but let's go with it. When we started using it, just what, a couple of years ago, I got into it in version 3. It's now what, 5.2, and the change in the way it works now, it is so much more capable than it was then. So that, as it is constantly evolving. I guess there is, and so therefore I can sort of see in certain fields, and we mentioned in the pre-show around software engineering, um, this the use of LLMs and an AI in the software field is changing the field. Is changing what it means to be a software developer. But I think that's changing, not deleting, because as a software developer, you've still got to have somebody who is thinking about the overall picture about what it is you're trying to do. Not and to be able to check and robustly test and develop the code. Um, Here, I think we do get into a bigger discussion really about, are we working to live, or are we living to work? Because you could argue that as a society, if AI is doing what we feel it should be doing, which is taking the weight off, it's allowing us to do what humans do best. We make decisions and things like that, allow us to be more creative rather than being hard focused. Then is this anxiety just almost a displacement of what it means to be human, and therefore is there a fear of how we live our lives, we less focused on work. However, there is a reality here of most people need work to pay the bills. Work just doesn't magically, so money doesn't come out of the air. So, um, whilst I've seen some of these arguments around, this will allow humans to be more creative and things like that. Society, I don't feel is at a place that we can take AI taking over our jobs and it'll all be fine, because you need to pay the bills at the end of the week, and that's where I think a lot of this anxiety comes from. Is people don't see them jobs to change into that they used to be there. So it's complex, but you're right. A lot of it is it's it's probably, we blame it on AI, but it's workplace focus, job security as a whole.
Yeah. And think about this too. I mean, this issue is largely like white collar focused. You think
Mhm.
about AI is not going to replace your plumber, your electrician, like I tend to think about these as like first world problems in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and they are, right? I think that between the organization approach and the responsibility of them to make sure that their employees are taken care of, or that these things are implemented in a way that changes the workforce but not damages the workforce. um and then who it actually affects, I think we have to kind of take a step back and understand that, yeah, it'll probably replace somebody taking your order at McDonald's, but it probably won't replace the fry cook in the back. I mean, probably, maybe,
Yeah.
but you know,
And a lot of people are using it as force multipliers, not replacements. So some people are using it, and certainly I know that we have been using it in a way that we were able to do things that we weren't able to do before, or we didn't have access to before. So it's not replacing a job because we just wouldn't have done it in the first place, if that makes sense. Um, so that's also an interesting way. But I guess you look at some of hi- historically, I completely agree with you around the trades of plumbing, electrician, woodwork, joinery, that type of that stuff. There are other traditional roles that have been hugely impacted with technology and we possibly don't recognize or talk about. So take the farming industry. The farms used to have loads and loads of people working, working the ground, working the animals. That all that piece. A lot of that work has now been, the personnel on a farm has now shrank rapidly, or massively, because you've got GPS and automation within tractors to get a lot of that, make a lot of that machinery work, and just the use of machinery and automation has reduced the need for hands-on personnel, and I think that's probably quite a decent perspective or insight into how technology can evolve an entire industry.
yeah, I think as we sort of look at this story here, and I'm trying to think towards the future, and like what can we do to help with some of this anxiety. If any organizations are listening, I think one of the big things we talked about, the organizational responsibility to talk about it, r- talk about it from the perspective of, rather than half of you are going to lose your job in 18 months, to actually understanding what the AI tool that you're implementing will actually change, and how the people themselves will be supported rather than the other way around. How will the AI supported by be supported by the people, but rather how will the people be supported by the AI tool? And changing that narrative, I think will go a long way for making this type of discourse, or this type of anxiety, this type of stress associated with AI is going to take my job, to be a little bit less of a sensational stressor in the workplace. And I think obviously, I'm going to go ahead and plug human factors here, just in general as a field, because hi, human factors cast here. Uh, like
Who
there's always going to be a place for human factors practitioners to step in here and design these jobs, with the humans being a key part of that human in the loop, right? And I think that is one thing that we have to remember. You can't just outright replace people. And so I think I'm coming from it, we're both probably going from it with a very privileged lens of saying, yeah, we know how this is going to turn out if you just flat out replace people with AI, and it's not going to be good. uh so it's easy for us to not get super wound around the axle for something like this. But I can see where, if not everybody is talking about it in the way that we do, um, then there could be some anxiety. So, yeah, I don't know. Any other closing thoughts from you, Barry, on this first story?
Yeah, I guess for some reason, for some people, that anxiety, I guess, becomes very real because the nature of the workforce, or the nature of business, the nature of certain capitalism, is there's a lot of people who are willing to try this. And the two examples I gave there were where companies had gone out, they tried it. So obviously they did have physical effects to staff, but it all comes sort of right in the end. So I do think there is legitimacy around around the anxiety because people do try these things. But longer term, we are in the I think we are in the throes of the revolution, as it were. And things will come right at the end.
All right. Why don't we get into this next story here?
Yeah, so I guess to follow that, follow on from that topic, we're coming with some of the most visceral concerns around AI, which are around the technology's role in extreme psychological reactions. A scientist who's been studying AI effects on cognition warns that excessive reliance on chatbots, especially in creative or reasoning work, may be creating a kind of what they term a cognitive debt, eroding that the mental skills and resilience over time. So, Nick, do you find that if you're using chatbots too much, are you refusing to think anymore, and you're just taking on what the chatbot gives you as gospel and running with it?
I don't know if that's necessarily what they're talking about here. I think to me, what my interpretation of this article was that so let me back up and kind of give some more context for this. This is by the same person who predicted AI psychosis, which, if you're unfamiliar, AI psychosis is basically um, so- it's psychosis triggered by AI. You want a different definition? I don't know. Um, and this person predicted it a while ago, right? And I think what they're trying to predict now is that those who are in, as you say, these creative or reasoning roles, um, these scientists, intellectuals that are engaging using these AI tools, what's going to happen is that um, if you lean too hard on AI, you will start to feel like there's all this ideation that's happening that you can't follow through on. And so
Mm,
that's the way I'm interpreting it. Um and I feel like there's at least for me, I've encountered this specific thing. I have lots and lots of ideas as a content creator in the human factor space. There's only so many that see the light of day. A lot of them I explore through, AI, chat GPT, whatever. I go in and I write like, hey, what would it take to do XYZ? Or, give me a couple ideas for this, that, the other thing. And that ideation is nice and helpful. But I think the thing that I often find is that I will come up with this really great concept or idea, and then I'll flesh it out a little bit, and I'll leave it half baked because, um, before, the thing that would stop me from doing it would be sort of the ability, the bandwidth issue. And then now what it is a bandwidth issue on a different piece. It's like now it's not necessarily that I can't do it, it's that I feel like I'm farther than I would have been if I just cut it off to begin with,
yeah.
saying I don't have the time to do that. Now I can at least explore things a little bit, and now that is this cognitive debt in my head. And I know that um when we're talking about this concept of cognitive offloading, we're doing more and more of that with these AI chatbots. And like, I have this idea, boom, I put it into chat gpt, and then boom, it's gone forever because I've offloaded it. If I remember it, I'll go back and search up that chat, and it'll be there, and I've offloaded that to the AI. And I think this is sort of that concept of cognitive debt that they're talking about here, this accumulation of using these tools like AI to externalize the memory functions and and the reasoning functions behind some of these things that require a lot of intellectual thought. um, is this cognitive debt where now I've offloaded that reasoning, or talking through, and it's stuck in a chat somewhere, and then I don't have it written down anywhere else. And then if I want to retrieve it, I have to go and search for it, and I have to remember to retrieve it. So I tend to think of it less as like a crutch and more of like a I've put my information into this thing to explore this concept or to do more thought on a thing, and then it's suddenly lost. And so this cognitive debt is the buildup of that lost stuff that you'll never work on again. At least that's my interpretation of it. I feel like there's probably a little bit more nuance in the article, but this is me speaking from experience and kind of the way that I'm seeing myself going. And sometimes I have to back up and be like, I'm never going to touch this chat again. Why am I even trying?
Yeah, it's interesting. I sort of took it more from a methodological toolkit perspective, in that what I felt they were getting at was a lot of people may be using this to and using online tools to get you to a place where if you don't necessarily have the scientific training to be able to do this, or have the years of research foundation to understand how good research comes together, that they were suggesting that we lose that, um, and you're just then leaning on ChatGPT, etc., to help do that. But I think they also negate their own argument in it, because the example that they lean on was the AI researchers who used AI, or you highlighted the potential for AI to assist in scientific discovery when they did prediction of 3D structures of known proteins. And but then they also then go and say, they it's if they hadn't used this, they're still building on that lifetime of work, that lifetime of research. So yeah, I don't think the argument necessarily hangs together. But even if it did, um, the way we use technology changes and evolves. So, we used to, well, I say we, I certainly my parents and before then used to use logarithmic scales, or logarithmic tables, used to use slide rules and things like that before, like, sort of the calculators came along and spreadsheets and things. I have no idea how a slide rule is used. I very rarely use long division, long multiplication. I rarely do writing down of long form mathematics in any of its forms. I'm using a calculator, I'm using an Excel spreadsheet, I'm using them sort of tools. I don't, but I don't. So my cognitive debt there is I don't know how to use them older techniques, and I have no idea how to use them. So if I need to do that sort of thing, I have to rely on a calculator to do it. I have to rely on a spreadsheet to do it. I could go and find out if I wanted to, and that's a different thing. But I don't use it on a day to day basis. So is there just a point where we turn around and say, well, actually, because we can, or I don't think we can do it yet, but in the future we will be able to use um, AI based models and tools to help us advance scientific research so much that actually does it matter as much that we don't necessarily know, don't remember the far flung basics of how to do things because things have moved on. There is an argument around the difference between tools and methodology. And so if we're suggesting that methodologies could change, and how do we make sure the findings are robust and things like that, that's a skill we definitely need to keep. Um, but how we use tools and chatbots and things like that, um, are we at risk of holding ourselves back?
Yeah, I find it interesting that um, they target intellectuals, and this goes back to something that Neil said in the pre-show.
So there's my observations of kind of uh, kind of that cohort age group, and looking at it at kind of what their performance level is like, kind of academically, etc. And it's this kind of inverse shape function. The higher a performer level they are, the less attracted they are to heavy AI usage. I mean, they will get familiar with it because they feel like they need to be. But in terms of just full utilization and hooking their grade to it, not at all. But
Which is good.
kind of the more a student kind of goes towards the other end of that continuum, it seems like they like to utilize it more and more and more. And that's actually the end where it's like you shouldn't be.
And sort of the inverse relationship of those who rely on AI.
Mm.
And so what Neil was saying is that those who uh, maybe are more on the, and forgive me if I'm paraphrasing incorrectly here, but more on the intellectually inclined scale, tend to rely on AI output less
Yeah.
than those on the other end of the spectrum. And it almost seems like, you need to flip that where um where the ones who are intellectually inclined taking a look at an output. I see, this is my problem, I think, with the claim here, is that they're claiming that this would be more for those who are in research based roles, um or the science based roles. And I disagree with that slightly. I think if you were to actually plot this on a graph, I'm the name is escaping me right now, but do you know the graph where, there's the amount of knowledge that somebody knows in a field, and, their confidence in how
Yeah.
capable they are, and then it kind of goes up sharply at the beginning. Sorry, I'll do it this way. It goes up sharply at the beginning, and then there you have that sort of trough of realization there. I feel like this type of thing would affect those who are at the peak of that first peak, who feel like they know enough to do the job, but they're dangerous in
Yeah.
so many ways.
Mhm.
I feel like this is who they're talking to, because I feel like people like you and I can look at an output and go, yeah, that's bullshit. We're not gonna take that. Um, or we need to reprompt it to get to, the certain output that we're looking for. But those type of people, I feel like, might actually, fall into this automation bias trap
Mm.
where you have, just this bias of accepting what comes back. Um and and they have these outputs that are pretty and are, um well spoken or whatever, but they're not deep, they're shallow, they're not in depth, and they're not giving you the thing that you actually need. And especially combine this with stuff like time pressure. I can imagine it's very, very real that somebody in that situation would go, "Yep, this is good enough." And when you have the people who are taking a look at the outputs and going, "That's not quite right," then I don't think you have that same issue. And so I think it kind of falls into these medium range, uh, familiarity with rigorous science that would fall into that trap. So I don't know how valid the claim is. We might see it pop up more and more. And again, if you're like looking at, um, if you're looking at AI psychosis, it affects a very specific target demographic. Um,
Mm.
and I think this is likely the same thing that will happen here. It will be an effect that we look at, and we will see those that suffer from it, but I don't think this is going to be something that many will suffer from. I think it's a warning for those in that position, maybe. Um, and I don't know if all that is conveyed in this article. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think the term you were looking for earlier was that graph is the Dunning-Kruger
Oh, thank
effect.
you. Yeah.
Yes. And again, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you talk about people within their domain. So you kind of got two people, the people who know and the people who bluff. People who just try and talk a good game. And you do wonder whether using AI as a tool empowers more the overconfident, the bluffing people, and gives maybe more weight to their argument or the work that they do. Because what I sort of believe is the more expert you get in your role, the more you realize you don't know what you're doing, and more the imposter syndrome sets in. So because you realize that you don't know everything, or you know vastly less than what you think you do. So I think that's quite a thing. I do think that this is an evolution of the technology. As I sort of said earlier, I think there is an element here that it is a tool. We've got to get our heads around it. It's possibly the most powerful tool or set of tools that we've had in such a long time, since since the first industrial revolution. That things are changing so dramatically, but there's so many people who don't know what this actually means and what it is. I mean, I'm seeing discussions, I'm seeing requirements, or where people just turn around and say, AI is going to solve this for me. Right, okay, but what type of AI? What type? Because there's many different things. Why do you think it's going to do that? How do you know you can trust the output? How do you know you're going to work alongside it? And I think it's the people who, with the greatest respect, don't know what they're talking about, that will use this sort of stuff more without any without any guilt, without any fear, without any thought. The intellectual people that they're or the strong academic people that's been referenced in this article, they do recognize what they're doing because they are AI researchers, and so they are. And the fact that this is being talked about in this way, they clearly are thinking about how they are using it, the limitations of it, and what it does. But as a society, I think we've got potentially bigger problems of not necessarily replacing as they do. I'll quote out of this here. They talk about how AI can replace the mental muscles, which is akin to what I said at the top of this little bit around the way we use tools. Some people are not replacing their mental muscles. Some people are using muscles that they didn't know they had, or muscles that they don't have, but they think they have. So in the way that they use the AI elements of it.
Are we just immune to this because we're human factors practitioners? Like, is that like we're aware of the pitfalls here?
No, I don't think we're immune to it at all. I mean, again, my Amanda and I, my wife and I, we talk about this on a regular basis because, and I think this is quite healthy. I think she's very, she's not anti AI. She's worked in the AI field for a very long time. She played with neural networks when they were still cool. The but I would say she's AI skeptical. That she thinks that we need to be taking the work we do with AI with a massive bucket full of salt. Whereas I'm quite pro. I see it as a tool that we should be experimenting with, learning about what, understand the limits of it. And I think between the two of us, we're about right. But I think it's very easy to, depending on what your motivations are, depending on the environment you're working in, I think you can probably go too pro, or you can go too skeptical. So I don't think we're pro to. We're probably more in a front seat position to understand the effects. So we recognize, and it's very much front and center, that these effects are going to exist, and we have to really understand how we distribute tasks, what the effects can be, how humans interact with stuff. Especially we're in this vein at the moment of we expect a car to be driving along, and suddenly it does something wrong and goes, nope, I'm not in AI mode anymore, it's over to you. And as the driver, you've got to pick up and drive this thing with milliseconds of notice, and then wonder why you crash. So there is, and even in the human factors domain, we have a range of very significant speakers, very significant people within the field. Some who are so anti AI, it worries me. But other people who are so pro AI, it worries me. So yeah, I don't think we're immune to it. But I think we do have a front row seat into the impacts.
Front row tickets to the end of the world. All right. Any other Any other any other closing thoughts on this one?
I think I would sort of sum it up in this way, that it's about how we understand the new toolkit. And there are going to be some people who don't want to use the toolkit, but we need to.
Yeah, agree. Okay, well, thank you to our friends over at Futurism for our news stories this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to the original articles in our Discord, where you can join us for more discussion on these stories and much more. We do post those as we find them, so you'll notice when these posts were time stamped, and then you can count back to how far before the episode that was, and you can know that we did a good job. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in aviation. Yeah, this week in aerospace. We'll be right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially thank you because you keep the lights on. You make the cool lights in the background happen. You make the lab happen. You make the platform happen. You make it happen. You make this whole thing happen. So thank you so much for everything that you do for us, for your financial contributions. And if you want to be a patron, you can do that. Human Factors, patreon.com/human factors cast. I mentioned it before, but we have a brand new segment as of last time called This Week in Aerospace. So we're going to take it away to our friends over from the HFES Aerospace Systems Technical Group, Phil and Elena. Over to you. What's the latest in aerospace?
This is Elena Phil from Aerospace System Group at HFES. So after our last recording, we started talking about the overhaul of the US air traffic system and all the changes happening right now. And it was just so fascinating. So today, we focus our discussion to bring listeners up to speed on air traffic management.
On January 11, 2023, all US flights were grounded or delayed nationwide for close to 2 hours. It was the first time since 9/11 that the FAA issued a nationwide ground stop in the country. What happened? During a scheduled maintenance of the computers running Notice to Airmen system, or NOTAM, one employee mistakenly replaced one file with another, corrupting the database. This led to the outage of the NOTAM system, which provides advisories to all aircraft pilots about potential hazard along their routes and airports. With the NOTAM system down, the FAA grounded all flights to ensure safety.
It's so surprising that moving one file can disrupt the entire air traffic system. It took close to 2 hours to fix the error. And from a human factor standpoint, if a file location is that important, shouldn't the system be designed so that this type of user action is not allowed? That is something to consider.
Then in May of 2025, the Denver En route Center suffered a 90-second communication and radar blackout. Now, to be clear, aircraft continue flying their assigned route during that time, but ATC could not reach pilot to give them a new clearance. Similar blackouts occurred days before at Newark Airport. The blackouts were the result of faulty radio transmitter that failed one after the other. primary and the backups. During the Denver incident, controller used a guard line that is usually used for distress call and reached one aircraft to inform them about the loss of communication at the center. That pilot then broadcasted to the other aircraft, instructing them to change radio frequency to reach an operating center.
Wow, I was not aware of how it unfolded. So, to better understand the problem, can you tell me what the current state of ATC in the country is?
All right, so I want to be clear, air traffic management is safe and working in the country. No doubt about that. And everyone is committed to safety, that is controller, pilots, airline, etc. But ATC is facing two issues. One is infrastructure, and the other is workload. About infrastructure, following the NOTAM outage, the FAA was tasked to conduct a risk assessment to evaluate the sustainability of all ATC systems. For example, NOTAM is such a system, such as electronic flight strips or weather information. The report was released in September of 2024 by the Government Accountability Office. Its title was unequivocal. FAA actions are urgently needed to modernize aging systems. I remember the report vividly because I had just started the HFES newsletter for aerospace at the time. And it was one of the first news that I covered. And I was shocked by what I've learned. Out of the 138 systems surveyed, they identified that 76% of them are unsustainable or potentially unsustainable, meaning that they have outdated functionality, a lack of spare parts, or if an update is available, there is no funding to support its acquisition. What is more concerning is that 58 of those systems are considered to have critical operation impacts on the safety and efficiency of the airspace if they were to fail. This is what happened with the NOTAM system that we talked about earlier.
And from my understanding, the situation has gone on for a while, and the FAA is aware of it. Their problem is with funding. Over the past 15 years, the FAA's budget for ATC infrastructure has remained essentially flat at approximately $3 billion per year, meaning they were unable to upgrade equipment across the country. You can look at the FAA's report. They share pictures of their work environment using fans to cool an old radar system, using aluminum foil and wrapping it around ribbon cables to reduce interference. Some systems even use floppy disks to share files between computers running on Windows 95.
I mean, when your operation rely on using floppy disks in Windows 95, that's a sign of an unsustainable system. Now, for people watching online, or if you go over the YouTube channel, we'll present pictures taken from the report for you to see. So clearly, there's an infrastructure deficit. But what about air traffic controllers? I would imagine that working in such environment must be a challenge for them.
You're on the right track. ATC workforce is facing significant strain due to staffing shortages, high workload, and demanding work schedules. There were just over 14,000 controllers in 2024, but close to 7,000 of them are expected to depart by 2028. That's half of the controllers within 4 years. To mitigate this, the FAA plans to hire 9,000 new controllers by 2028, offering incentives such as educational support and a 5,000 graduation bonus. Although the FAA has expanded training beyond Oklahoma City to additional centers, including Emmons-Riddle, training remains highly demanding with a 26% dropout rate. This underscores ongoing human factors challenges related to fatigue, training burden, and workforce sustainability.
All right, so let's circle back to the ATC overhaul that is happening. So in May of last year, the US government announced that it will replace the air traffic control system. Their program is called Brand New Air Traffic Control System, or BNACS. It has a budget of $12.5 billion and 3 years to make major changes. It will replace copper analog cables to bring in fiber optics and high-speed internet connection. It will replace radio for voice over IP to prevent issues reported previously. And it will also install ground surveillance radars at more than 200 airports. It's a very ambitious program and will need to move at a fast pace. And this is only the first part. As Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, has already announced that ATC modernization will need an additional $20 billion to complete the work. So this is the first part, is to show to Congress that they can deliver before asking for the next 20 billion.
So actually, I read that Peraton was named the prime sister integrator for this modernization effort, but I've never heard of them before. Who are they?
Well, it's totally normal that you've never heard of them before because Peraton came into existence less than 10 years ago. So in 2017, Veritas Capital, an investment firm based in New York, bought Harris Government IT Service Division and renamed this Peraton. At the time, Harris was also responsible for ATC IT infrastructure, but that division, the one for ATC, was not sold to Peraton. Peraton has continued growing by acquiring other business units in the areas including space, intelligence, cyber, and defense.
Wow, sounds like a fast-growing business. What else have they done so far?
All right, so for what we know, Peraton was not involved in previous projects related to ATC. Their role as prime system integrator of BNAX is to steer the entire acquisition program and to allocate contracts to supplier. One of the first major announcements they made is the replacement of over 600 ground-based radars. Collins was awarded over $400 million to install two types of radars. The Condor MK3, which is a cooperative surveillance radar, meaning that it uses aircraft transponders to locate its position on ground. For aircraft without transponder, they also installed the ASR-XM, a non-cooperative radar that detects aircraft using reflected signals. Intergroup USA received close to $250 million to install 46,000 new radios. So things are already moving. The FAA announced that their contract with Peraton will be made available on sam.gov website. I've not seen it yet, but we'll keep you posted when it becomes public.
All right. So thank you for everything. Today we explored the current state of US air traffic control, from recent system outages to broader challenges posed by aging infrastructure and workforce strain. That reminds me of something that Adam Larry, a fellow human factors professional, said following the announcement of ATC modernization. Beyond installing new equipment infrastructure, we also need to consider the training for the new equipment and how it will change operations on both sides, so ATC and the pilots, and how ATC modernization is really a system-wide change, and it's an exciting time to observe its development. That is all we have for today. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I ended it just a little bit early. I'm sorry. They always look so sharp. I feel like we're here in hoodies. They're like fully dressed up in makeup, and I'm like, we need to step up our game here, Barry.
We need to obviously get on with our makeup game.
Makeup and they have the overlays and everything. They go full out. Like, what are we doing here? They're putting us to shame. All right. Well, thank you, Phil. Thank you, Elena, for the coverage of This Week in Aerospace. Really appreciate it, as always. If you love the coverage of This Week in Aerospace, let us know. We want to hear that. But right now, it's time for part of the show that needs no introduction. So it's time for It Came From. Barry, what is your one more thing. What am I? Did I mess it up? I messed it up. Now it's time for one more thing. What's your one more thing this week?
So my one more thing this week, I had a meeting today with the first Minister of Wales, who's effectively the Prime Minister of Wales within the UK, and she was great. She said hello. So, what is it you do? So, we do human factors. And what is that? So we had this thing about where you have to explain in a single sentence to a politician. Ellen N. Morgan is not a unintelligent person or anything like that. So you're trying to explain to an intelligent person, but they've got very, very limited time. and you've got to try and get this concept over to them really, really quickly. Now, I find we have many, many conferences that still can't describe human factors
Yeah.
in a pithy sentence. So how was I going to do that in about 10 seconds? And so both I and Amanda give it a good valiant go. And she turned around and said, so it's a bit like ergonomics then. I'm like, yeah, broader, sort of. And then she went on to the next person. So it was an interesting exercise that I struggle with explaining what we do with the best of times. But to try and explain it to the First Minister of Wales in a pithy sentence in a way that she could grasp before going on to the next person was a particular challenge I did not enjoy. And we were then trying to discuss it on the way home from this event to try and work out how can you do human factors in a one-liner that appeals to a politician. So we're still working on that one, but it was a fantastic experience to meet her today and introduce her to the world of human factors.
The go-to I always go to if I have to do like a one-liner, I always go to it's designing for a human for their task given the context that they perform that task in.
Yeah,
Not all encompassing, but it does enough to
well,
get
yeah.
it across.
We saw a similar thing around fitting the task to the human rather than the human to the task. But then I did throw some rather spicy examples that were very relevant to the rest of the audience that was there. That if somebody else had heard me, I could have got into a bit of trouble. But anyway, no, it was a fun exercise. What about you, Nick? What's your one more thing?
Well, you had mentioned vibe coding a few weeks back, and I thought, oh, you know what? I should probably try to do that. I had tried like way early on when AI was just a brand new thing, and it was not anywhere where it needed to be then, especially for somebody like me who's familiar-ish with coding, but is not my strength. Like I'm not don't have a background in coding. Like I know how to print hello world, maybe is how I could put my coding skills, right? Um So, what I've been doing is I've been working on a tool to help with some of the human factors news that we get. So, it's no secret that the way that we conduct our news search is across a variety of different sources. We try to mention them on every show that we do. You can imagine that there's a lot of noise in the signal that comes through. And so, what we're trying to do is trying to find the needles in the haystack that are pop culture-ish, related stories to human factors. Those are good ones to talk about on the show. Other types of stories that are, would have sort of the mass appeal. Those are the types of stories that we try to pick for the show. Not only to make it, interesting to talk about, but interesting to listen to. So, with all that being said, I've started vibe coding a human factors news triage tool that looks through multiple RSS feeds and will use a locally installed LLM to start rating and sorting the relevance of each of these individual items. Uh, as it relates to human factors, and it'll come back with a score, and then I can filter based on the score. I can filter based on how far back I want the dates to go. And it will tell me, a summary of how it relates to human factors. So that way I don't have to think super hard about it as I'm trying to find these needles in the haystack. It's again meant as sort of a cursory glance. So that way I don't have to go through headline by headline and go, oh, that's human factors. Can I read it? Oh, nope, that's actually not human factors. Go back to the list. It's actually meant to be just a short list of things that I look through. Long time listeners of the show know that I used to put together a human factors news roundup every week, every month. That got to be so tedious that for my own mental health, I had to step away from it. So, this is trying to get back at least trying to find a tool that will help with some of that. So it's in an okay state. I need to do some further testing and validation of it, but it's interesting. And now I can talk about my own vibrance. Yeah, that's what I got going on. Oh, and new Star Wars trailer. Excited. Yay.
Oh,
Yeah.
We've got Project coming out soon. I'm quite excited. So anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah. Lots of fun stuff. Let's talk about that in the post show. That's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode, enjoy some of the discussion about AI, I'll encourage you to go listen to any of our about last week's episode. We talked about AI there. Go do that. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. Despite your feelings on Discord, yeah, we're aware, we're tracking. We might find a new home. Who knows? Anyway, we're there for now. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a few things you can do. One, you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you're watching or listening right now. That's free for you to do, and it really helps us out. Two, something that helps us out more than that is telling your friends about the show and tell them that you like us, because your friends will trust your judgment over a anonymous review. And three, if you have financial means to and want to support the show, you can always support us on Patreon. Everything that you support goes right back into the show. I don't pocket any of it, although Barry skimmed off something a lot one time to buy a car. I still haven't got that money back, Barry. Give it back. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk to you about AI taking their job?
Well, AI is already taking your job, so there's pointless come talk to me now. But no, you can always come talk to me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram if you want to see some recent pottery failures. But if you want to come and listen to the newly revitalized podcast where I chat to individuals in the human factors domain around their expertise and experiences, then find me on 1202 The Human Factors Podcast, which is 1202pod.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Rome. You can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Rome. If you're watching live, stay tuned for the post show. For the rest of you, thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
It
depends.